My introduction to horror didn't come from a dream demon or a zombie in a hockey mask. It did not have a puzzle box, nor did it come from the depths of hell. No, my introduction to horror came from a children's book. A book that was written to help children overcome their fear of the dark. It was called The Flat Man, and it was published in 1988. Written by Rose Impey and illustrated by Moira Kemp, the book is a short story about a little boy who's afraid of the flat man, who hides in the shadows. The man can stretch his body up to the ceiling and flatten itself against the floor. He can slip under the crack of a closet door, and he can crawl along the floor like a snake. The flat man wants nothing more than to smother and terrify the little boy. Now, the story on its own is creepy enough, but nothing prepared me for the illustrations. The flat man was a paper-like entity with a wide, bald head, broad nose, and a pair of angry eyes. Throughout the book, we see him creep and crawl towards the boy, bending and folding his body in impossible shapes to remain in the shadows. The worst came when he reached the boy in his bed, twisting his body so they could wrap his thin arms and spindly fingers around the boy's body. Now that I look back on it, I guess you could find this to be a metaphor for fear itself. How it can envelop you, suffocate you, bury you in anxiety and terror. The book does have a happy ending, however. The boy, fed up with the monster, flings it off his bed. He finds his flashlight and uses it to stun the flat man before finally turning on the lights to his room. The flat man, weak and helpless, crumples up into a ball and flies out the bedroom window. But it doesn't stop there. For what is horror without a twist? As the boy lays back in bed, he notices a paper bird hanging from the ceiling of his room. It was a present his parents had bought him. He then pretends that the bird is a monstrous vampire, ready to swoop down on him at a moment's notice. And that's how the book ends. As a 6-year-old, that was pretty intense. The idea that everything and anything could become a monster, that no matter what I did, there was another monster waiting for me around the corner. Talk about scary. Now, I still have this book, the original from my childhood, with its ripped dust cover and worn pages. It was just one of those books I could never get rid of. Every once in a blue moon, I would take it out of storage and flip through its pages, wondering if the illustrations and stories still creep me out today. They still do. However, I look at the book differently now than I did back then. You see, as I sat down to write this journal, I took a moment to download a digital copy of the book to get a refresher on the story and its artwork. It's been quite some time since I sat down and actually read the book. And having reread it not only as an adult, but as someone who... You see, what I hadn't realized back then was that the child created the flat man. It was not some bloodthirsty monster that lived in the shadows, but a figment of the boy's imagination. You see, at the start of the book, the boy recounts how his room would transform whenever the lights would shut off. How the shadows would make his toys, clothes, and desk look like terrifying creatures. He liked to think of the branches being the claws of the monster, drumming its fingertips against the glass, wanting to get in. But it is what came next that surprised me. The following is a passage from the book. But I like to pretend that it is the flat man trying to get in. His long, bony fingers tap on the glass. "Let me in," he whispers softly. Tap, tap, tap. It is only a game. I like scaring myself. How apropos. What better describes the horror fan base more than this quote? It is only a game. I like scaring myself. Isn't that just the truth? We know that it's fake, the movies, the books, the comics, the tales around the campfire. But while we read, watch, or listen to the stories, for those moments we like to pretend that it's real. We let go of reality and pour ourselves into the world of terror that these creatives have conjured. A world where zombies feast on human flesh, where demons possess housewives, where poltergeists terrorize families, and where dolls come to life. But what happens when the movie ends? When the last page of the book is flipped, or when the storyteller finishes their tale? Well, we find ourselves cast back into the real world, but not without consequence. The horror sticks with us, lingers on our bodies like a smell. We cast glances over our shoulders, lest the masked killer be right there, raising a knife over their heads. We monitor the dark corners of our bedrooms as if waiting for the glow of a monster's eyes. And thus the game begins. The game of scaring ourselves. As the book says, we know it is fake, but we like to pretend it's real because we like scaring ourselves. And that is how I was introduced to horror. Tell me, do you remember The Flat Man? Did you ever read this book as a child? If not, what was the book or movie or even TV show that introduced you to horror? I would love to read your experiences in the comments below. And I sincerely hope you enjoyed our first episode of Grim Reflections. I am Mazer, and I'll see you all next time. Happy nightmares.